So I am Amy Peck. I am the founder and CEO of EndeavorVR. We work with companies on really just looking at how to solve problems using this technology and then building kind of an end-to-end strategy for deploying. And so I do find it interesting that pharma's not there, but when you really look at the landscape, there's a lot of opportunity. But what we looked at also was a lot of our clients were getting stuck in POCs, and we'd have incredible numbers. And I think even if you listen to Bosch, who's one of the sponsors, it's 25 to 30% increase in productivity, on the warehouse floor. I mean, that is incredible. And yet companies aren't really deploying. And part of that is that consumers don't have fluency with the technology. So as a company, we started looking at, what were the drivers? Like, what are the things that are going to bring consumers to AR and VR? And, we think location-based entertainment is one of those ways. I think mobile AR is the other way. But location-based entertainment has the opportunity to fundamentally kind of change the way people interact with virtual reality. So I wanted to talk about that today. So I'm going to share a little bit about the landscape, and I have some data just around the numbers, because the numbers are there. So this is from Greenlight Insight. There's a lot of great analysts out there. Tim Merrill, whose company is DigiCapital, I believe is here and speaking today. You've got Greenlight Insights, you've got Super Data. But the data all points to this market continuing to grow, and it's growing roughly 25 to 35% year over year. And then this is literally hot off the press. It was just released today, but I pulled some strings and got it last night. And this is from Super Data, and again shows the volume of sort of software and what the market holds. And location-based entertainment is going to have a significant portion of this market. I'm sorry, I have to keep walking back and forth because we don't have a clicker that works with my laptop. And then this is from another source called Future Source, and they did sort of a deep dive, and they have a great report specifically on LBE. And again, just like AR, VR, MR, XR, we have LBE, we have location-based VR, LBVR, we have out-of-home entertainment, but whatever you're calling it, sort of overarching location-based entertainment. And so they have released a lot of strong numbers, and they've even broken it out by what they believe are sort of the 4 main types. I actually think there's 5 main types. And the reason I think there are 5 is that there's a strategy out there that each of these companies has sort of an element of, but no one's really put it all together. And so I wanted to share today an idea where I think that we can, elevate this, because what's happening is these companies are all having a slightly different strategy, but some of them sort of cross into each other. There's a free roam, sort of an arcade, family entertainment might be called an arcade. But Springboard VR, if you look at the family entertainment line, Springboard VR and vArsenal are very interesting because they basically have a business in a box. So if you're sort of a mom and pop shop and you want to bring location-based entertainment to your arcade or open up a storefront with VR, they have an end-to-end system. They have a back-end system to deliver the content. They've done all the licensing. And what's interesting is they also run their own arcades. So they're consistently getting new data, and they're sharing that data with their clientele so that everyone can kind of elevate this business. However, the caveat is that Springboard VR just came out with a report, and we've heard IMAX closing a couple of locations. The companies it's break even. Maybe making a little bit of money at best. So how do we solve this? And then how is it going to impact sort of the greater industry of virtual reality? So I'm going to give you the recipe, what I believe is the recipe. So these are the things that are, all integral pieces of an LBE business, no matter what the approach is. So content and franchise IP, investment in runway, multiplayer, throughput, And location, location, location. It's even in the title. And a little bit of luck. So I'll start with content. Content is queen. So there's a lot of great content out there. There's games, there's immersive experiences, there's education, pharma. I mean, there's a million different types of content out there, but it's not getting seen by everybody. And then the other issue is that this is a very, very expensive endeavor. So if you're building, or actually you're licensing content, for example. So you're paying a license fee, then you're building these experiences from the ground up. So your Dreamscapes, IMAX, the Void, those are very, very expensive. They're capital intensive. And if you don't have enough investment, you don't have enough runway, it's going to be a challenge. It has to be social. This is a big key. So this is where multiplayer comes in to being. But there's another kind of overarching piece of this, too, that is that I think I fundamentally disagree with this notion that VR in particular isn't social. So when you're in a headset, especially if you're in a game or an experience and you're interacting with either player characters or any other person within that environment, it feels very real. They can even look very cartoony. If you've ever been in Facebook Spaces and you've been with your friends, even if there's someone that you've never met and you interact with them in a virtual environment with their avatar, a lot of times you'll actually recognize them in real life. Why? Because people's physicality is the same. Their expressions are the same. I move my hands. So there is this sense of presence, and it really is social. So how do we get past that notion? And this business is a big math problem. So it's how many people can you put through in an hour, and how much are you charging, and you have to subtract your overhead, and then your lazy workers, which I love that icon. I love that there's an icon for lazy worker. It's really impressive. So I've been working with a company called Periscape VR as a client, and they opened up in the international terminal in JFK, and they have a slightly different approach. They don't refer to the VR kiosks as kiosks. They're actually called towers, and the reason is they're beautiful towers. And people see them and they're amazed. And she was interviewed, I actually think by Charlie Fink of Forbes, and he said, "So why JFK?" And she very simply said, "Well, I want to go where the people are." And that seems so obvious, but it makes total sense. There's 70,000 people go through the JFK terminal every day, and it is the broadest swath of demographic, right? It's sort of, can't even really be defined, right? You've got every age group, you've got every nationality. So that, to me, really kind of holds the key to what I think the strategy should be, that I think all of these companies need to kind of galvanize and work on. So I'm going to lay this out a little bit as sort of a basic kind of business plan. So starting with high traffic location, like airport, like malls, like casinos. Now there are VR installations in all of these types of locations, but the fundamental difference is that, well, I won't even get there yet. The fundamental difference is it's very specific content. It's a lot of games, and that's sort of continuing this myth that VR is only for games. Consumers just don't believe that there are these other kinds of experiences out there. So we need verticalized content. So by verticalized content, it means showing travel experiences, showing education, hospitality, any kind of great content that's out there. And like I said, if you go onto Jaunt VR's website, there's amazing content out there, but there's just not enough people looking at it. And that's part of our job in this industry, is to get consumers excited about it. So this is the big one, because when I say this, everyone in the business looks at me like I'm insane. But free to play. Because we're asking consumers to put on a headset in the middle of a day. They don't know what they're going to see. They don't know if they're going to like it. And then we're asking them to pay for it. That's not going to work. So we need to have this plethora of amazing content, and we need to put it in these high footfall areas, and we need to give it to them for free. So how do we do that? Sponsored content. So brands have a ton of content that they've already built, they've already paid for. Maybe they did a couple of pop-ups. Maybe 5,000 people saw it. It's collecting dust somewhere. And it probably feels old to their ad agency or whoever produced it for them. But 95% of the population hasn't seen it. And my guess is that most consumers would be happy to watch a cool 3 to 5 minute sponsored, branded experience so that they could get into other forms of VR and check it out. And that, to me, is the key. So the other piece of this is data, data, data. So if we put consumers into these great experiences, we dust off some of these cool branded experiences. I was in Heathrow, and Hugo Boss had this soccer experience. And I tried it, and it was actually really fun. And they did it really well because it was done in a way that I remembered not just the experience, I had a great time, and I remembered the brand. I mean, that's the marketing holy grail. That's what you want. And so there's a way to pull all of these aspects together, and then we're going to collect a lot of data. And the data is, what do consumers want to see? So on the marketing side, it's great to know that somebody put on a headset, they looked at your branded content, they took their headset off and they walked away. That's just as valuable as someone putting on a headset, staying in your experience, and then engaging with other forms of content that we also, by the way, we track. What did they go to see? What did they see in the Travel Channel? Were they waiting for a plane to go to Illinois? And then did they go into VR and look at beautiful videos of Fiji? It's the first thing I would do. So that data is going to do something that's even more important. It's going to create demand. Consumers don't even know what virtual reality is. So if we can socialize VR, if we can get them excited about it, get them thinking about what they like, then they're going to start to ask for other types of content. We're going to see what the most popular titles are. And yes, there are great games out there, and Beat Saber may single-handedly save all of us from, wallowing in obscurity because they've managed to kind of cross the space-time continuum into non-gamer realm. Because non-gamers love it. Everybody loves it. And so but we need more of that, and we need to really excite people. And this is why we care about this. And again, you don't hear from me around location-based entertainment because it's not really part of our core business. We're born out of enterprise. But we are working on all the things that we know are slam dunks, right? We know that it's great for simulation and training. We know that it's great for education. We know that it's great for healthcare. But the only way that we're going to elevate for all of us is if we start just becoming more familiar with just 3D in general. AR is a big component of it. We don't really even know how to interact with the AR on our phones. And so when Magic Leap comes out, what are those interactions going to look like? Did the HoloLens? Is this going to be the flower? Are we going to be doing that? We don't even know. And so we really need to start looking to the consumer, engaging them in a better way. And I think that this is one of the most powerful ways to do it. And I will tell one story about JFK because it really sort of underlines all of this. There's a gentleman, he was an older gentleman, I think he's in his 70s. He came up, and he's sort of like a, burly guy. He was kind of tough and gruff, and, he said, "What's this?" And so I told him what it was. And I said, "Would you like to try it?" And he said, "Well, I don't know, what is this thing? I said, you put it on your head, it's virtual reality. Because I know I've seen it. And I said, and we're charging about $1 a minute. And he went, no, I'm not, there's no way I'm paying for that. And I said, all right, I'll give you 5 minutes. Just go on in. So he put the headset on, and I put him in the blue, because he had told me that he was a Navy SEAL. And I thought, all right, that'll make sense. So he's in, and he's kind of looking around, and he's sort of floating, and he sort of, recognizes now that he can sort of impact the jellyfish and move around. And he starts to just kind of relax into it. And I keep hitting 5 minutes and 5 minutes and 5 minutes. And I think he had no idea how long he was in there. And he was in there for a little over 20 minutes. And he came out of the headset, and he was a completely different person. I mean, he was welling up with tears. He will never admit this in a million years if you find him, because he's a big, tough guy. And he said, that was the most incredible experience I've ever had. He said, I haven't been underwater in 25 years. And you could tell, like, it touched him on a visceral level. So if we can do that for him, we know, I mean, we're all in this industry, right? We're part of the second grade soccer team you've heard me talk about, right? We travel around in a pack around the ball, talking to each other about how great AR and VR is. But we need to get out there, and we need to get people excited about the tech. And then, if you remember the recipe, with just a pinch of luck, everybody wins. And that's it for me. So does anybody have any questions around LBE, or does anybody have any ideas around this particular strategy? Did I miss anything? Come on, someone's got to have a question.
I like that you mentioned social VR. I work for Lindemann as a contractor, and I have a presentation that we're going to go live into Sansar, which is a
great.
VR world. It's not a question, it's just a comment. I'm happy that you mentioned that because two or just one?
Just one.
I also learned through my own presentations what is really important is to make that connection with the avatar. I was just in Singapore, and we threw up some live video from inside Sansa where there were 25 avatars, and people thought, well, why are they throwing up some random cartoon people in the background of the show, of that music presentation? And I constantly said, no, these are real people. They're all over the world. They just have these embodiments in which they choose themselves. And that's a concept that is, weirdly enough, really complicated to get across. I don't know why. Maybe we're so conditioned to believe a game character is an NPC or an agent. And so everybody who tries to sort of, quote unquote, sell this technology to, quote unquote, ordinary people, I think needs to really stress that the people inside the virtual world are actually real. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, you're exactly right, and that's that's why Facebook has spent billions on Oculus, right? They understand that there's this social component, and worlds like Sansar and High Fidelity, and then their originator Second Life. Those are we are sort of inextricably on a path to those worlds, but baby steps. Because telling people that yes, Ready Player One, we're actually going to put on our haptic suit, and we're going to be the aspirational version of ourselves in virtual reality, it's kind of a lot. So we're starting here. We're just hoping to engage people, and I think there's two main factors with any of the software, and I will totally answer your question, but we're pretty good on time. Is that it should have utility, or it should be entertaining, and in a perfect world, it needs to be both. And until we really start to give the consumers those experiences, the same with AR, right? It's why AR, I mean, these phones are so powerful, and they're all equipped with AR. We can do tabletop AR. We can do all kinds of things. But it's the entertainment piece and the UI, like we haven't quite cracked it yet. But yeah, I do agree that the virtual worlds are, there's a lot of opportunity there. Yes?
Hi, thank you for the talk, first of all. Regarding to your title, and on the background of companies like Magic Leap saying now they want to go into location-based entertainment as well, do you think that this is so that LBE is a kind of a bridge, not bridge technology, but a bridge phase, so to say, before everybody has these devices? Or do you think that like this individual distribution channel is like is not going to happen? Or like is this just for the next 5 years that we see a lot of location-based entertainment companies and then they will all disappear again?
That is such a good question, because we do talk about that, because it could go the way of laser tag, right? Once you start, and one of the monikers for location-based entertainment is out of home. So what happens when everybody has a headset or their Magic Leap on their head? Like will that evolve? And I think it will. I think it's really, that'll be down to the content and the level of content. We can stream everything on Netflix, and yet still for the right film, we go to the cinema. I think it'll be sort of the same thing for location-based entertainment. And the nice thing about the augmented world and being able to have wearables, it means that you can sort of gamify your entire life. And so that is going to have to evolve, and I think it's going to be more of a wearable than it's going to be on our phones, because it's just not comfortable to walk around. You saw Pokemon Go, and people were walking into trees, suboptimal. But yeah, so it's going to be down to the content, for those companies to survive. Yes.
Good presentation, and I'm on board with the idea of sponsored and branded content. That's what I do, but I think there's some inherent challenges, which is trying to do anything innovative with a big company that could potentially afford to do something really innovative. Do you have any advice, or maybe some examples of brands that have done this work that has actually been good? Because I've seen a lot of shitty work, and I haven't seen a whole lot of really good work. And I'd love to do good work, but to do good work, I think right now takes a lot of money, and unfortunately, then the brand has its own agenda. It needs to sell a product, and then that kind of dams the experience. So I'd love input on that.
No, I think that's great, and I actually do have a slide in one of my other presentations that has, like sort of a horrible, badly drawn VR experience, and it's called, bad VR is still bad VR. And yeah, what happened as you well know, in sort of the marketing realm, is like all the agencies ran out to like, oh my God, let's do like immersive content, and they charged a fortune for it, and it was sort of, and even if it was good, nobody drew a line from the brand to the experience. Like they'd leave and go, God, that was really cool, and they have no idea, to connect it to the brand. And so that was a fail, and it was expensive. And then the purse strings completely shored up. And then we got a better handle on the creatives and a lot of the smaller shops, who really had the proper capability to build great experiences, and particularly around, Unity and Unreal, where it's more of a game construct. Those started to come out, and there's companies like The Mill. I work very closely with Technicolor. They have The Mill and MPC. They've done some great experiences. But I mean, think about, you're in a mall, and it's Fashion Week. You're not going to be front row at one of the fashion shows, but LVMH can give you that experience. And so I think that customers would want to go in and have 3 or 4 minutes of the front row of a catwalk, right? It doesn't have to be magic, because again, it's the experience of being there, and it's giving them just something new that excites them. But to your point, the bad VR, I think there's less and less of that now. The financial component, they have to kind of backfill it. I mean, it's like any new technology. They have to invest in it. And I think that it's a different way of thinking about marketing and advertising, because you're not just splashing it out to hundreds of thousands of people, but you're giving a visceral experience to one person at a time. That's different. It's hard to wrap people's heads around it. But when you look at all the media around the dreaded word millennials, you can't market to millennials, right? It's not. There's no sort of traditional path. What do they all want? They want experiences. Give them experiences. I mean, that's. But again, to your point, the companies are investing in it. And I think the beauty of where we are right now in this construct is that they've already spent the money. And if they are not sitting on bad VR, if it's a good experience, this gives it legs. It's sort of, I mean, they're going to have to pay for it, but they'd be paying, $20,000 a month to be on Clear Channel or, one of the other screens in the airport. So, anybody else? Yes. Let me see if we're good on time. I don't want to run over. We're good.
Okay. I work for a pretty small XR house out of Philadelphia, and we've done a handful of installations in hospitals and settings similar, where for oncology patients to kind of get a sense of, have different experiences of, what it's like to be in the city, because a lot of people are traveling from outside, or do a relaxation experience where it's meditative, or learn about the procedure that they're having.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the problems we've been having with clients, similar clients, is it's not a branded experience and it's not a paid for experience, because their value is just in having kind of the new tech and being able to advertise that. But a lot of times they don't want to staff up people to actually work those experiences and have someone put it on them and have them adjust the focus, things like that. So a lot of patients are coming and just kind of putting it on right off the bat. So it works, 75% of the time, but a lot of people seem to they give up because they can't figure it out.
Yeah.
It's out of focus, something. Have you had any experience with kind of unmanned installations, or
I
any
am
ways to do that?
fundamentally, a lot of people don't agree with me on this, but I am fundamentally against having, unattended VR experiences, because we're shooting ourselves in the foot. Because the technology, you just know it has to be restarted. I mean, I can set up a Rift or a Vive in like a ninja in 20 minutes flat. And it still is a challenge for me sometimes, or thinks something needs to be reset. So we can't expect, I think that's, have a bad experience in VR the first time, you're not going back. But there, companies like Springboard and VRarsenal are trying to help minimize the amount of attendees who are there, so that one person can probably man, 10 stations, so that again, you get that economy of scale. Again, the technology is getting so much better, and I think with Oculus Go and then certainly Quest coming out, and Vive will answer soon with a new version of their tetherless headset. So it's, the technology is moving pretty quickly, so it's really about getting that form factor and making it much easier to use. But the all-in-one headsets are going to solve a lot of that problem. Anybody else? Yes.
Thank you for presenting on this topic. I work at Facebook on augmented reality, and we are definitely looking at location-based experiences as a promising use case for persistent AR technology. Curious, what are some of the unique considerations for AR that you see in this use case?
Well, it's funny, I'm working with a Korean Innovation Center on an accelerator program, and we're building an app around K-pop for the mall. So when you think about kind of combining marketing and social and even fandom, or even just any kind of experience, the beauty of AR is that it can be anywhere, right? It's not location-based, it's sort of everywhere-based entertainment. And I think in AR, being able to sort of gamify people's lives, not in sort of a Pokemon Go kind of way, but even sort of like a live sort of escape room in the mall, right? Where you're engaging with brands, you're engaging with your friends. I think the opportunities are sort of endless. I'd be curious to know how you guys are looking at it. We should talk after. Anybody else? All right, I am officially putting my track chair hat back on. And I'm going to go grab my iPad so I can introduce our next talk. Thank you all for joining me today.